Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum, Reduce, Reveal, Secure. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our speaker. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Thank you again for joining us today. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Trey Tunnell, Chief Information Security Officer, Floor and Decor. We are excited to have Trey for his closing keynote presentation titled Department of No to Department of Go, a developer's view from the CISO seat. Welcome, Trey. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Nick. And if only I had such a wonderful speaking voice. Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, if you happen to be somewhere west of me. My name again is Trey Tunnell. I work with Floor and Decor. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've seen in regards to the transformation of the security teams from when I was, in early days in early 2000s as a developer, and to what I've seen throughout the years. And let me get my pointer in the right place. There we go. So as far as our agenda goes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but then we're going to talk about this evolution of the security team from a traffic cop to a trusted partner, and just how it has evolved as the years have gone by. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about what some of my views are on how can we be the Department of Let's Go? What is it that we can do to earn the trust that we need, and to build the processes that we need so that we can enable our business, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And then we're going to go through some questions, but as Nick mentioned, if you have anything, just put it in the chat. I've got it open here. I hope that I'll see it, but you don't want to listen to me talk for 25 minutes. So if you have questions, please ask them, and I'll address them as we go. So, quick tour of where I have been in my career. Started a long time ago. I'm dating myself. So, 97, I started with Home Depot, and was there for 15 years. Did mostly application development work, and then progressed as a developer to leading developers, and then leading teams of developers. Ended up being in our HRIT world for a couple of years, and at Home Depot, I was one of 1,500 associates. After 15 years, I thought it would be good to go and see if the grass is greener. And I landed at Parodies, which is, I went from a IT department of 1,500 to IT department of 15. So all of those teams that I took for granted at Home Depot, like my networking teams, my security teams, all of these folks, the infrastructure teams, server teams, all those things that I had come to rely upon, Google was now my answer. So Parodies was a great experience because I got to learn about all of the nuts and bolts stuff that, as an application developer, I never really got a taste of at Home Depot, because we were so big at Depot. We had a team for everything. So I never really had to get outside of my realm of application development. So Parodies was great because it really opened my eyes to, some of the other things that are out there. 2014, moved over to Napa Auto Parts as a product owner. Ended up leading the development team, one of about 500 at the time, and that was my move back into big IT. Not that Parodies was small IT, right? They just were a smaller shop, and Napa was a bigger shop, so we had more people. And I grew up at Depot, so it made more sense for me on a daily basis to live in a team that had was a big team. And then fast forward to 2019, I landed kind of sideways into security. One of my old friends from Home Depot needed somebody in security that he could trust. I didn't know anything about security aside from the fact that I had been on the other side of the fence for 20 something years. And I'll talk a little bit about, what are the similarities that I've seen from the development world and that I'm seeing in the security world. But last 3 years, I've been at Floor and Decor in the security space and have loved every minute of it. And so this is the part where I talk about that transformation, right? What did it look like in 1997? Well, in the beginning, there was paint. I was an associate systems engineer at Home Depot, working on the Home Depot paint system. And, what I'm going to walk you guys through is, what did security look like in retail in this particular time and place? What was my interaction with security? And what are my overall, thoughts? And, as the state of security, there were, cybersecurity existed in 97. There were two really good books, Ghost in the Wires and The Cuckoo's Eggs, that were, very it's a really interesting read if you get a chance to go back and read it, just to see what the technology looked like at the time. But it's amazing because regardless of time, regardless of technology, geeks are geeks. They're going to find a way to, manipulate things, phone freaking to all the things that we do nowadays. It's really neat to see those two books and how the geeks back then used technology for for their own fun. And by the way, when I say the word geek, I am a self-proclaimed geek, and I'm a big fan of geeks, so that is not a derogatory word. And my interaction with security was minimal. And this was a Home Depot, a pretty big shop at the time. I think we had about 600 people in IT. And although I was totally geeked out by the books, the security was just not top of mind. But it was, like I said, cool to see the tech that they're using. And if you fast forward to 2005, Dad was still at Home Depot working on the Home Depot Special Services system. And if you all remember 2005, this was the pre-Target and Home Depot hacks, right? So the security in retail, it wasn't a pressing priority. However, teams had been built, the processes were put in place, and this is really where it was the department of no, in my opinion. Y'all, I was a developer, so I'm coming from, I think I say it right down here, considering we were like 10-year-old children who had never been told no. So that was me as a developer. But it was the conversations weren't about business. The conversations weren't about what we were trying to achieve. The conversations were about hard rules. You can't, you won't, things like that. And I mean, the security teams were almost combative out of the gate. And I'm sure that our developers and my development brethren were either combative right from the beginning as well, or shortly thereafter. So there's all this churn, right? And it's kind of like the building of teams. What is it? Forming, norming, storming, performing, or forming, storming, norming, performing. That's it. So same thing, right? These are teams that have been created that are now having to, they have been asked for a lot, right? They have been asked to protect the environment. And it was a pretty challenging place to be. And, my thoughts here were, it was pretty painful for everybody. Security was evolving. I call it the M&M approach, the thin candy shell on the outside. We had a great perimeter, and we just kept everything on the inside. Man, those were the great days, weren't they? The teams, the security teams especially, they had a lot of responsibility with very little control, and even less support from people like me, like our development partners. Again, because I was that 10-year-old kid that had never been told no. So we're going through this process. Everybody's trying to find their way. Come to 2013, 2014. Oh, everybody probably, well, if you're in retail, you remember this. And if you ever shopped at Home Depot or Target, you remember it too. 13 was the Target hit. 14 was the Home Depot hit. I had moved away from Home Depot at this point. I was working at the Parity Shops, which is a small airport retailer. And I was adjusted to my new world of being one of 15. The state of security in retail, this is when it started to become real, right? And it was bad because, people were realizing that we could monetize attacks on us. And, we became an official target, pun intended. Budgets were about to go nuts. Security teams were given a big arse hammer, and cybersecurity wins a seat at the kids' table in retail. And the reason I say it's at the kids' table is And this is also depending on shop, right? I've got, limited exposure, but in my opinion, at this point, cybersecurity was taken seriously because we knew the damage that could be caused then. And at the time, the damage was significant, right? I mean, Home Depot and Target both took really big hits when they got breached. And at this point, and looking at my interaction with security, it was now the Department of hell no, because now not only do I have all these rules and all this responsibility, now I've got everybody saying, do whatever you need to do to secure this place, because we now realize that it's important. So it was increased interaction with security, but it was forced. Lots of toll gates, lots of review boards, lots of stress, not a lot of partnership or collaboration on solutions. It was still very much these are the rules, follow them, right? I don't care what you're trying to do. These are the rules, follow them. And like I mentioned, right, the things had just gotten real in security from a retail perspective. And the security world was like, see, I told you this was going to happen, and it did. So now I'm going to start swinging this huge hammer, and everything starts to look like a nail, right? So the cyber gets a seat at the table, and some even at the adult table. Like, don't get me wrong, Home Depot, Target, they were officially at the adult table at that point. But other retailers were slower to adopt, especially if they had not been hit, right? It's much easier to learn a lesson when somebody's hitting you over the head with a breach than it is when you're in peacetime and trying to convince people in retail that it's a good idea to spend money on security and not our customers. Which, in my opinion, if we spend money on security, we're spending money on our customers, but you know what I'm talking about. All right. So, the thing that for the retailers that didn't get hit, and that, for the security leaders that were trying to earn a trust at a seat at the table, it's either thrust upon us in wartime, and you really don't want that, or you earn it in peacetime. And this is the kind of the model of, I can teach you in a non-stressful environment. I can teach you all these things, but frankly, until a reality of a breach comes in, some people aren't going to get it. They're just not going to get it. So, we were evolving from a security perspective. We had the pendulum had swung. Security had a lot more control. They were getting a lot more visibility. The tools were improving. Back in the early 2000s, the tools just weren't that great, right? So security teams had all this responsibility and very little visibility based on the tooling that they had. So anyway, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. 2013, 2014, kind of a bad year, but it very much helped shape the maturity of security from there. Because, in 2019 is when I moved into the security world. I started as the operations cybersecurity director at Floor & Decor. And, a lot had changed in just those short 6 years. The days of breaches causing significant harm, they passed. They happen every day, all day. I get, one of my main functions in life is to keep up with threat intel and know what's going on in the world of security. And there is no pattern. It's everybody. These bad actors are attacking, $100 million retailers, $1 million retailers. They don't care, right? So it's gone are the days where, oh, if you get hacked, you must have been doing something wrong. And by this point, security teams have been established. There have been processes put in place. There's a focus on security. Has translated from taking metrics and telling people what they can and can't do to listening to what's going on and trying to understand how can we enable that, right? And this progression had been going on the whole time, and it was different at every retailer. So please be gracious with me as far as my timing, because it could be different in other people's experience, but you get the idea. It had to take the path from going from, the traffic cop, measuring everything and doing our very best to keep people honest, to really doing the same thing, but now we have more visibility. Now we have recognized that you can't be in security if you're not understanding the long-term goals of the business, right? And the days of the department and no, they're gone. And that is not just something that I've seen at the companies I've worked at. I work a lot with people that are in the security world, but are outside of Floor and Decor. And it's, you still have pockets of the stick, but the carrot is being used a lot more now. And really, I think the biggest thing that has allowed us to take that seat and take that place is talking more about risk, right? Like, what is the risk that we're dealing with? It's not IT risk, it's not cyber risk, it's business risk. And as more and more security professionals started speaking that language and started talking more from how can we do better as a company and go faster in a more secure way, it was, all those conversations, all those thoughts are being had. But the one thing that you got to be careful of is during that maturization, there's some scorched earth out there, right? If you have a security team that's been in place for more than 5 or 6 years, there's scorched earth. And what I mean by that is in the early days, and there's just a lot of potential infighting in regards to, what's the most important thing that I need to be working on as a security professional. It's always security. But not everybody thinks like that. We've got developers that want to focus on features. We've got engineers who want to focus on, IAC and building things faster. Well, that's great. We can do all those things. And if we do it right, we can do all those things as fast as people want to do them and be secure as well. But if you don't address that scorched earth, if you have people, because I had folks that it was really a challenge to get things done because there was baggage that was left around. So we had to have a sit down and work through that. And it's something that you have to see in your own environment and deal with it in your own environment. But just know, if that baggage is still around, it's going to make it really hard to take that next step and get to that seat at the table. My interaction with security in 2019, yep, it's my job now. Man, and my thoughts, the technology is amazing. I had no idea so I'm a technologist at heart. I was a developer and just love technology. And the technology in this space is crazy. It's just, it's the coolest tech that I've seen. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about security is the community is so supportive. And I think the reason why is, as a developer, I could have been working on Lord knows anything. I had all sorts of problems that I was trying to solve. And, if I would go out to events, I would talk to people and they would have different problems. The coolest thing about security is you walk into a room full of security people, you all have basically the same problem. And it's all different based on, it's just scale, right? How big is your company? How much risk are you willing to take? Are you, do you have regulations, things like that? So at this point, when I got into security, I was just really, really geeked out by the technology. There was a significant shift to everybody enabling the business, not just developers but like security and engineering. So that was a big deal. And this future was looking mighty bright. It was very a hopeful time for me. And so got a question. Hold one second. How do you balance speed to market? Oh yeah, boy. So how do you balance the speed to market, especially regarding continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD processes against security requirements? So in my opinion, if you build the pipeline properly, the CI/CD pipeline, you're baking in your security tools into that pipeline. If you don't have your security tools in the pipeline, it's a really fast way to create issues for you in the real world. So And there's a lot of good tools out there that you can integrate with your pipelines. We're integrating contrast. We're integrating lace work. There's a lot of options there that I'm happy to talk to somebody else about. I'm not the industry expert, but I know a lot of really smart people, and I'm happy to talk through it. But yeah, no, as far as CI/CD goes, you've got to get in with your development teams and your engineering teams and make sure that you are building security into the pipeline. If security isn't part of the pipeline, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. All right. Thank you for the question, by the way. All right, so I'm just now going to talk about a couple of things that I've seen, and not just in the security world, but in the business. I've been in retail for 25 years, and so just a couple of things about how do you kick ass at work? Like as a team, how do you kick ass? And so, in my opinion, one of the things that's key is you need to be striving for a seat at the table. So, and what does that mean? That means that your customers, your customers are whoever they happen to be. My customers are my business partners, and my customers are actual customers at the store and the associates at the store. So, you gotta, but at the end of the day, I need to figure out how to get a seat at that table. And step one is you got to define the table, figure out who's sitting there now, and start enabling those people and their people. And this is a little bit of it's pretty obvious stuff I'm throwing out here, y'all, but the key is how do you build these relationships? Because it's those relationships that get you that seat at the table, because it's trust that gets you that seat at the table. We can demand it. We can, and they'll put you there. You'll sit there like with everybody else, but that's what I mean when I say it's at the kids' table, because you're there, you get to see everything, but you're really not engaged because you don't have that trust that makes you the trusted partner. So first and foremost, you got to define the table. Once you know who your people are that you need to be enabling, start enabling the crud out of those folks, right? Grow your relationships with all of those. And I talk a little bit about how to mature relationships at the bottom. Again, nothing earth-shattering here, but it's my take on it that I don't know, you might glimmer something from. So and as far as the partners that I've worked with, the ones that I have enabled the most are the ones that are coming to me more often than I'm going to them. So, it's that if you can find a way to help and enable and, find challenges to solve for your business partners, it's going to allow you to see a need and fill a need early. And the more times, the more wins that you have, the more times that you help them out, the earlier they'll bring you into the process. And at some point, it will be, they'll be coming to you early. Now, this does not take the place of process, right? You still need to have an architecture review board. You still need to have an integration review board. You can't not have those, because you can't just hope that everybody's going to do the right thing, because they won't. But this is something that you have to do that will, again, there's a difference between being at the table and having a seat at the table. So this is kind of what I'm trying to get to. And some ideas on relationship maturity scale. And this is kind of the pattern that I've used, and it works. You got to seek to understand. Don't ever go into an environment thinking that you know everything, because I promise you don't. And the more you listen, the more you seek to understand, a couple things are going to happen. One is that people are going to see that you're paying attention. People are going to see that you're trying to absorb it. Two, you're gonna absorb it in theory, right? And trying to understand what it is that they do, what it is that, what tools do they use to do it? How can I help? Understanding more about the landscape and how you can potentially fit into it. And I call that skeptical allies, right? Any new relationship with a non-business partner, your skeptical allies at the end of the day. So anyway, I just got a 5-minute timer, so I got to hurry. All right, and then you move on to IT advisor, and this is when you got to seek to deliver. And even if it's on stupid stuff like, hey, I need, toner for the printer. How do I do that? Well, let me go find out for you. It's like, doesn't matter what it is, but what will start happening is these people that now are thinking that they're going to trust you, they start seeing you as the face of IT, which is a good thing. And then they start asking you for stuff. And, a lot of the time it's stuff that's completely outside of my realm. But if I just say, no, I'm going to pawn them off to something else, just go back to skeptical allies, because at that point you've ruined the relationship. So the point here is serve your team, serve your business partners. And if you serve them and help them, they will start to trust you more, and that will then get you to a space of trusted partner. And then listen, you're doing the same things here, but now you're seeking to enable, because you're going to be able to see things a lot earlier, and you're going to be able to take what you understand about the business, because you've been learning this whole time, and actually add value to the conversation, because you're not just a security IT person, about the business. And I think that's one of the things that has helped a lot of people in this space is, being able to sit at that table and translate what you know about security and technology into things that can enable the business, show them the art of the possible. And because otherwise they're going to come to you with an answer, hey, we need this vendor with blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. Let's go back and talk about it a little bit more. So anyway, that last stage is trusted partner, and you want to seek to enable. All right, I just pretty much talked about this. Know your business, serve your business, and then that's going to allow you to secure your business. A couple of roadblocks: trust losing events. Security trying to deploy something that adds work and adds no value. Whew, people hate that. So try to minimize your trust losing events. Security is going to cost, but we've got to minimize that cost and maximize the value. And one of the common roadblocks is security teams not respecting that cost. Like, hey, you're going to have to MFA. Well, suck it up. You're going to MFA. Well, no, if there's, let's talk about it. Let's make sure that that's the right answer. 9 times out of 9.5, it is the right answer. But if you don't give them that space to talk about it, it's not going to end well. And then the untouchables. You guys all know who we're talking about. There are people that are just not coachable, right? And I don't think I meant to say untouchables. I think I meant to say uncoachables, and spell check fixed that for me. But people that have a hard time, they click everything that they see ever. You got to find a way to get to those people, because they are a liability. And if you can't train them, you got to find a way to promote them to customer, or protections around them so that they're not a risk, right? There's all sorts of technology you can use for that. All right. Oh, man. Okay. So question number 2, how to get technology owners to remediate risk. Whew, great question. So it's all about priority, right? Everybody has a million priorities, and you have got to make it so that your need is, it's very clear what the priority is. And I'm not saying make it sound way worse than it was so that you can get them to do your work. Be realistic about what the risk is. So that all goes back to the risk conversation. You can't say, you have to, get rid of all old versions of Java. Okay. Well, why? Well, because Java's, let me tell you about the things that you engage with whoever it is that you're trying to convince. And, at the end of the day, if you define the problem and you believe that it is at X priority and they have it at X minus 5 priority, everybody's got a boss, right? So that's the time to escalate. But hopefully, if you can really well define the risk in business need and business terms, then when you're having that conversation, they're hopefully will hear reason. If they're doing their job, they'll hear reason and they'll prioritize it properly. But no, sometimes you got to escalate. All right. So cultureless security, and I think I've got How much time do we have left, Nick? I'm sorry.
About a minute or two.
Before we start questions or with questions?
I know we're supposed to end at 2:30, but
Okay. All right.
a couple minutes.
Well, listen, I'm just going to go through these last two really quickly. So culture security, the biggest thing here is community engagement. Please engage with your teams. There's a couple of ways you could do that. You got Application Security Coaches Club, where you get developers from all of the development teams, bring them in, do fun things. Security champions in each group, just like that with engineering or finance, all these other things. And you just find people with the passion and feed it, because there are people out there that are passionate about security. You just got to find them and just feed that beast. All right, last one. What does trust but verify means? Again, everything I've talked about today is about trust, right? Building that trust. Well, that's all fine and good, but you've got to make sure that the security pieces you put in place stay in place. So, I say trust but verify. Start with trust, never start with verify, but you got to be working on verify the whole time, right? You don't have to make that part of the conversation, but you've got to go into it with that verify. And verify is, are my monitors monitoring? And you should have scripts that go out and check, hey, is this working? Hey, is this working? Are you doing this? With is your key infrastructure monitored so your team can see it, not the engineering team? And I love my engineering team. But they have different priorities than I do. And I need my team's eyes on my infrastructure. And again, the scripts to check should run daily. And then alerts to teams when something is missed. And the last thing I'll say is create SLAs. And the biggest thing is do it in peacetime, right? And SLAs, you got to figure out what your SLA, what even you need to measure, right? What is it with your partners that you care to measure? In our case, a lot of times it's, response times, things like that. So build those in peacetime, because in wartime it's really hard. There's a lot of friction during wartime, and be transparent and own it when you do something. If I miss something, okay, I'm sorry, I missed it. Worse things have happened, right? All right, I think, this is a JFK. All right, questions. Sorry. And I think I answered both of them yeah, I did. So does anybody have anything else?
Great. Well, thanks again, Trey. That was an excellent keynote. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum, Reduce, Reveal, Secure. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.